Hey everyone, Austin here again with another Let's Play video. Today it's going to be Astyanax for the NES. This is a side-scrolling action game by Jellico. I don't know if it's loosely based on the arcade game by the same name, but it has similar mechanics, so it's likely related in some way or form. If any of you guys watching know, definitely post a comment down below. This is a pretty cool game, oftentimes overlooked on the NES. It's got really huge sprites. I think it's got pretty fun gameplay. Somewhat varied level design. I don't know, a lot of it does get kind of repetitious, but I think it's pleasing to look at. I think it sounds decent, and usually it's a really cheap game to acquire. So, you know, for the price it costs to obtain this game, I think it's definitely worth playing, definitely worth trying, especially for fans of action games on the NES. It can be tricky at parts, but I don't think it's the most difficult game on the system, not by a long shot. And but there are still some good strategies to know as you play this game. And so what we're going to do in this playthrough is we'll go through the whole game. I'm just going to talk about everything, you know, point out the power-ups and some basic strategies and things like that. Tips that I personally use to get through the game. And then at the end, I actually pulled up a couple of codes here on game FAQs, and that I didn't even know existed. Stuff like cutscene select, level select, sound test, and stuff like that. I'll go ahead and demonstrate those just so you guys can see those in case you've played this game before but have never seen those before. The level select is actually really interesting to me because back in the day, that would have been a great way to practice difficult levels. And there is one really difficult level about halfway through this game, which I think gives a lot of people trouble that do play this game. So that level select would be perfect for people that just want to, pick back up if they got a game over and they turn the console off, or they just want to practice the same stage over and over. So it's a really neat function. So, but yeah, before we jump into the actual playthrough, as usual, I'd like to give a big shout out to my current Patreon backers. So those folks are gonna flash by the screen. Thank you guys for supporting my channel directly via Patreon. Likewise, with the recent live stream super chatters, they're going to flash by as well. Thank you guys for your direct patronage on my live streams, which I do every week as of doing this video. So, but yeah, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and hit start and just jump into the game. And much like my Ninja Gaiden playthroughs recently, we're gonna go ahead and just be skipping through the story. This isn't a terribly long game. This game gets a lot of its length from the story sequences, and unfortunately the story sequences, they're not that entertaining, to be honest with you. They're not highly animated like you see in Ninja Gaiden, and even Ninja Gaiden by today's standards isn't very highly animated, but it's way more animated than the cutscenes in this game are. So you'll notice that your character here in Astyanax is huge. He is absolutely massive. And that's one of kind of the cool things about this game. There's not many NES games threw around really big sprites like this, or characters. And it's kind of neat to look at even today. It was neat to look at back in the day, but it's still neat to look at today. So you basically press A to jump, you press B to attack, and you have a power meter on the bottom that's constantly charging up. When your power meter is maxed out, which right now maxed out is about halfway for us, it does the most damage that you can do. So now you can constantly attack rapidly, but what I recommend doing in this game is charging up, because you do so much more damage when you're charged up. Although there are instances where it is beneficial to not charge up, like when you're fighting skeletons, it's good to not charge up. Also when you're fighting some mini-bosses like this, sometimes it's good to just keep attacking. Personally, my own strategy though, when I'm at bosses, I try to just charge it up all the way, or as much as we can. There are power-ups you can get that will extend your meter. And almost there. Come on, dude. And let's go ahead and just use our magic. So you also have magic in this game. You can actually press start and scroll through your various spells. This is the blast spell, apparently, but if you pause and press up, you can actually select your bolt spell. You can use them just like you're using sub-weapons in Castlevania by pressing up and attack. Now the bolt spell, the manual states that the bolt spell is the most powerful weapon in the game, but I think that it's actually the weaker of the two offensive attacks. The third spell is actually basically a stopwatch kind of spell where like you'll just pause everything on the screen, and that's actually got some very handy uses as well. But I actually don't really use it that often. But if you're new to the game, using the stop spell or the stopwatch spell, whatever you want to call it, I think it's called bind actually. It basically just, you know, causes everything on the screen to just stop in its tracks. Let me actually go ahead and demonstrate that after we kill this skeleton here. One strategy with these skeletons is to constantly just jump and attack. So you'll notice that, you know, when you jump and you attack, you'll basically fall down and you'll basically hold your weapon out. So let's go ahead and hit start and go to the bind spell, and we'll go ahead and use that when an appropriate enemy pops up. Now you do have lots of endless pits in this game. And, you know, when you fall down an endless pit, you do die. And this axe here is basically a weapon power-up. And there are 3 different main weapons in the game. You have an axe, you have a, I'm gonna guess, a rod or something like that, or a staff. And you also have the sword. The sword is the most powerful weapon in the game. And I highly recommend getting the sword and keeping the sword. If you die, you basically end up losing your weapon and you go down a step. So if I die with the sword, I'll basically get the rod or the staff, and if I die with the rod or the staff, I end up going back to the axe. Now what's interesting about this game is that the weapons are at varying strengths and they have different perks basically. So the rod actually ends up consuming the least amount of magic. So if you're, you know, if you rely on your magic a lot, maybe it's beneficial to just stick with the rod, which is your second weapon. The axe that you start off with is kind of like the mid-range weapon in the game, which is interesting to me. It actually is more powerful than the second weapon you get, but not as powerful as the sword, and it also consumes more magic than your second weapon. The sword does the most damage, and your spell attacks are apparently the most powerful with it, but it consumes the most spell energy. So kind of neat stuff. I actually looked at the manual before doing this Let's Play, and the manual explains it just like that. It's actually kind of interesting. I had no idea there was a little more subtlety to the weapons in this game. So on a couple of these vertical stages like this, I just sort of play it relatively fast. You'll notice that on some of these platforms you just jump straight up, because your character here, Astyanax, he jumps really high, and he'll actually sort of clip onto the platforms like above you, kind of like this. Like he jumps just high enough to be able to do that. And unfortunately, I'm not really demonstrating it too well, but you can actually attack these guys from down below. I'm just sort of bumping right into them. And what we're going to do is actually use our spell on this guy. I find these flying bosses to be pretty irritating, to be honest with you, but I make sure my sword is charged up, and I use my spell on him to get him out of the way. Now, this is basically a Medusa boss. She's pretty easy, to be honest with you. She basically comes out from one side of the screen. You could smack her in the weak spot down here, and then she basically claws at you and then throws out some snakes, and just turn around, attack the snakes. One thing that's nice about this game is you can actually, when you're ducking, you can just rotate back and forth, just sort of rock it back and forth, and Astyanax will turn around while he's ducking. There are a lot of old school action games where you can't do that. You have to get up, turn around, duck again, kind of like this, and but in Astyanax you don't have to do that. You can just turn around while you're ducking. It's a really nice mechanic. And again, we're going to basically be skipping through all the cutscenes and whatnot, so we're already at round 3-1. There aren't that many rounds in the game. I think it goes up to round 6-something. So, in a way, we're almost getting to the halfway point in the game. I'd say once we get to 4-1, we're officially at the halfway point in the game. And 4-1 is the stage that is quite tricky, quite challenging, so... but yeah, one of my strategies in this game is just attacking normally, as you see here. And then at very specific moments using my magic. Now, I didn't really explain these canisters here. That gauntlet, or whatever you want to call it, that I got, will actually increase the amount, the length that my power meter bar can go up. So basically, your full charge attacks will do a lot more damage. Those canisters, they actually seem to be somewhat randomized. There was one level I played where every canister dropped a gauntlet. And yet, on the next playthrough, it dropped a bunch of health. I got a lot more health. I'm going to go ahead and use our spell right there. That's actually a really dangerous part. If you jump straight up on that platform, that enemy that comes out of the ground will usually hit you, and you'll get knocked back into the pit. There is a little bit of knockback in this game, so you've got to watch out for that. Now, this guy here is a mini-boss. Pop it up right here. I'm going to go ahead and just use my spell. A lot of the main bosses in this game are actually pretty easy, and this is just a mini boss right here, and I don't believe there's an actual real boss after him. So we're gonna go ahead and just sort of wail on him like this. Unfortunately, when he does that sort of lightning attack from the air, there's no way to avoid it. So you're pretty much guaranteed to take damage on this boss. And notice that if you hit him too much, he'll go off the screen. And that's it. But yeah, those canisters in this game, they feel randomized at points. It almost feels like at certain points, like they always drop a very specific health item, but at other points, the drops that they give are random. And I'm not really sure what the rhythm or rhyme is to it. If you happen to know what that is, definitely post a comment down below and let me know. So one thing I do like about this game, though, is I appreciate how there are vertical sections like this. It's not all just, you know, scrolling to the left and right. It helps to mix the gameplay up. If it was all just left and right scrolling and that was it, I think the game would get a lot more repetitious than it is. But thanks to these vertical sections, you know, the gameplay is definitely mixed up a little bit, and that's nice. It's definitely good for the game. So it's good for my enjoyment of the game, personally speaking. And on one of these parts later on, you can actually get a power-up. We're going to see if we can try to get that. I always miss it because I always forget about it, but I'm going to make a point to remember it this time, and it's right here. So you can do a little baby jump. Notice that you can actually just, you know, hold down the button for just a split second, and Astyanax actually won't jump all the way up. That's also another really nice mechanic. And we're going to go ahead and just use our spell here to kill this guy, just like that. Your burst spell in particular, or sorry, blast spell as it's actually called, I believe, is just insanely powerful in this game. It's my favorite spell. Now, when you're maxed out with your sword, unfortunately the blast spell can't be used that often. I think you can only use it like twice, but it does so much damage that it is completely worth it. It's absolutely worth it. And so this guy just flies around the screen now. You need to smack him in the head in the beginning, and then he comes up into the air and you can just smack him in the head some more. Not very complex, to be honest with you, not too terribly difficult to deal with. Now, I think the hitboxes are a little large in this game, so like patterns like that where he's dropping these bubbles from the air, it's a little bit difficult to actually dodge them, but you can attack them as well. Most bosses in this game that have projectiles, the projectiles can be destroyed, which is really nice. Even the final boss in the game, he's got some fireballs he spits out. You can destroy the fireballs with your sword, so that's great. Very, very good to know in this game if you're trying to play for survival. Now, we haven't died yet, but it's entirely possible we will die here and then have some major trouble. This could be a really difficult stage, so we'll just kind of see what happens here. So you have a lot of these fish that jump up, well, tiny fish like that, but you also have these big, sort of like warrior fish that have spears. When they jump up, they will oftentimes attack you. Sometimes they won't attack you, but you've got to be prepared for them to attack. And there we go, we got another gauntlet. I'm going to keep calling them gauntlets. I think I've actually got the name wrong on that, but it's not a huge deal. Now, this is one of the main levels I was kind of... Oops! That's going to actually cause us some trouble. And see, what I should have done there is I should have just used my magic. And that's exactly what I should have done, but I didn't do it. And now I'm going to pay the price because my little rinky-dink sword rod here is really, really weak. And actually, what I'm probably going to do is switch up to... Oh, I don't know. Let's go ahead and use the lightning spell now. Or the bolt. Yeah, see, notice how much more, notice how much weaker this sword is. This tiny rod sword, magic, whatever you want to call it. I guess it is technically a sword now that I look at it. It's not actually a rod. But yeah, definitely gonna pay the price for dying there. But fortunately, with this this sword, this, you know, level 2 sword, your lightning spell actually doesn't consume that much magic, and it's still really powerful from what it looks like. So that is a strategy. So, you know, when I play games like this, I don't play with, you know, a variety of strategies in mind. I usually play a very specific way. So the very specific way I play is to play with the fire spell or the blast spell. Now, the problem with doing that is that you don't have as much flexibility with how often you can use your magic. But it's really important in games like these to try to experiment if you want to have, you know, the greatest success. Now, unfortunately, I'm not gonna... Yeah, the sword actually uses up so much magic that I couldn't actually use the lightning spell again, or the bolt spell. And so that item we just picked up, they're apparently called wings. They supposedly let you attack faster. I don't really personally notice being able to attack faster. Perhaps your charge bar, you know, charges up a little bit faster. But that's the actual description in the manual. It says, allows Astyanax to attack faster. And unfortunately, I don't really have any more magic. Fortunately, oh, there we go, full health. Very good. So normally, I want to say that power-up just drops a red health potion. Red health potions only give you 3 hearts back, which is quite unfortunate. I don't know if maybe there's like some behind-the-scenes ranking that's going on. So rank in Japanese games, not just Japanese games, but it's very common in Japanese games. There you go, there's more health. Normally this level deprives me of health. But rank will basically increase or decrease the difficulty depending on how well you're doing. And so in a lot of games, what they do is the better you play, the harder the game gets, or the more stingy the game gets with power-ups. And I've played this level to where it's only given me a single red health canister, which only gives me 3 hearts back. Which is really problematic because, you know, this level is really the gauntlet. You know, of all the levels in the game, this is the one that throws down the gauntlet. It's very, very tricky to get through. And when you die in levels in this game, you go all the way back to the very beginning of the stage. So if I got there, died at that skeleton, I would have got shot all the way back to 4-1, the very beginning of that stage, Marshy. So, but yeah, as I was saying, it's really good to try to experiment in this game with your spells, especially with your different weapons. Like I said earlier, it might actually be beneficial to switch over to your second weapon, the weak sword or the weak rod or whatever you want to call it, because you can use your magic more often. And that can help you on levels like this, where there are a lot of endless pits. And it's really important to use your magic on levels like these, where you've got endless pits. So that skeleton boss on the previous level, again, you can basically just use the strategy where you jump and attack. And the skeletons really hate it when you jump and attack for some odd reason. And I'm completely okay with that. It gives me a, you know, a consistent strategy to work with on these guys. A lot of the skeletons are not very difficult to deal with, but as you progress through the game, they start shooting out projectiles and things like that, and they become a lot more difficult to deal with. And this is another reason why you want to just charge up your attacks if you can. Notice that I'm completely ignoring a lot of these like little butterfly enemies. Because there are these enemies on most stages that come out of the ground. And on these levels where you've got endless pits, see, these enemies are usually placed on platforms, you know, platforms that are preceded by an endless pit. And you'll end up jumping over trying to attack them, but you'll get hit by them or their projectiles, and then you'll get knocked into the pit, and then you gotta do the whole level over again. So if you keep your weapon charged up, you can see them spawn, and then just smack them and kill them in one hit. So it's a very, very fast way to take out very dangerous enemies. And I try to take out a lot of enemies that way without using magic, but there are very specific points in the game where I definitely make it a point to use my magic. And this is sort of a warlock here. We're going to go ahead and just use our magic, because the boss in this level isn't that difficult either, so I want to go ahead and just get this guy out of the way. Some of the mini-bosses are actually more threatening than the real bosses, to be honest with you. Like, that guy shoots a projectile that pretty much tracks you. It is very difficult to avoid. I haven't actually successfully avoided one, I don't think. And he can also freeze you in place, whereas this boss can't. So this boss can't freeze you in place, so I might as well just, you know, fight him normally, per se. And if I let my attacks charge up, all the way, kind of like so, I do a ton of damage to him, and I can just take my time. Taking your time is also important in this game, too, because you're not timed. there is no timer in this game. And, you know, that's actually kind of rare for NES games like this, action-focused NES games like this. And it's one of the things that makes this game a little bit easier, is you're not pressured to play really fast and play aggressively. You can sit back and destroy that guy's projectiles as they come out, and then let your sword charge up and then smack them in the face. Or what I used to do as a kid, I didn't play, so I don't want to say disciplined, but I didn't play methodically back in the day like I did now. I just attacked everything I saw as quickly as I saw them. You know, I was constantly attacking, kind of like this, and I wasn't letting my sword charge up. And that's a perfectly valid strategy. It works in this game, but it takes a lot longer to kill enemies. Those eyeball guys, when when they come on screen, you're not going to kill them in one hit. And then you've got those guys that pop out again. So it's actually, you know, very good to play methodically in this game, but you don't have to. So on boss fights, you know, that shoot out a lot of projectiles, you can just attack them quickly. You don't have to, you know, let your sword charge up and then, you know, sort of wait and analyze for a point of attack. You can just, you know, like smack them over and over with your sword or whatever other weapon you have. Let's go ahead and just use our spell right here. And there we go. See, these, you know, these ground-based enemies that pop out of the ground, they have a tendency of being placed just after pits, and so they're there to troll you. So this right here, this is Cutie. She's a character in the game. If I press down, I can change my weapon. I'm going to go with up, though, because it's going to replenish my spell power, which I'm out of, because I've already used my spells multiple times. So I think that's more valuable. But if you have a preferable weapon, like if you want to go back to your first level axe, you know, or you want to go to your second level sword or rod or whatever you want to call it, you can do that when you find her. And it seems like she appears pretty much randomly in canisters. So, but we got our magic back, which is great because I was able to attack those rods that popped up out of the ground. But again, if you're experimenting with different strategies in this game and you run into Cutie there, you can switch back to your level 2 weapon if you want. Remember that your swords in this game not only have different physical attack strengths, but they also have different magic abilities. Not magic abilities, but magic properties. So, like my sword here, my level 3 sword is very I can't even talk right now, man. Is very powerful. But it eats up so much magic, and if you're heavily reliant on magic, then you might want to go back to your level 2 weapon. For me personally, I just prefer to have my level 3 weapon, which is the sword, and then just use 2 fireball blasts, and then just, you know, kill everything else with the sword. And I try to kill everything with the sword for the most part, as is. Kind of like these guys right here. I have no reason to use magic here. They're not in really direct threat to my video game existence. So we're gonna go ahead and just keep jumping up here relatively quickly and then attack these guys as I see them. And notice that I'm just doing a lot of little baby jumps here. It's to not get caught up on the ceilings. If you try to jump up and you get into a ceiling here, you'll get stuck inside it. So it's good to just do baby jumps here in order to not get stuck in the ceiling. Thankfully, this isn't one of those games like Contra where the screen doesn't scroll backwards. In Contra, the screen will scroll backwards, and if you fall into a pit, you know, because you've scrolled the screen up too far, we're gonna just go ahead and use our magic here too, because this is the boss of the level. No main boss on this stage. But yeah, if you land into a pit where you've scrolled like the screen up, it'll actually scroll back down in this game, which is really nice. So there's no threat of accidentally missing a jump and falling back down. So this game is actually pretty well designed when you think about it. You know, you go back and you play stuff like Contra, and don't get me wrong, Contra is one of my favorite games in the system, but it's got some issues that can be a little frustrating to deal with as a new player. But Astyanax doesn't really have that. It's actually pretty well polished, it seems, in terms of, you know, how it handles things like the screen scrolling and whatnot. No cheap deaths, at least, in that regard. Alright, so this level is a maze. It's actually the only maze in the game, and you have to go through these doors, and the door that you have to go through has a skeleton guarding it. So you basically just need to go and hold up in front of the door that has a skeleton guarding it. So pretty easy stuff. At first, when I played this game a long time ago, I thought it was the color of the sort of ornaments in the doorway that that denote what door you have to go through, but it's not entirely true. But the foolproof way is to just go into the door that has a skeleton. You don't have to actually kill the skeleton either. So I'm just holding it up right there, and there we go. So if you're the kind of person that's like, man, I hate fighting those skeletons, you can try to get into the door without killing them, but I'd recommend just killing them. I don't think the skeletons are really that hard to fight in this game. Let's go ahead and just use our magic. When there are multiple enemies on the screen like that are bouncing all over the place and they're tricky to deal with, sometimes what I do is I go ahead and just use my magic. Because again, pretty much all the bosses in this game, the main bosses, they're not really that difficult for me to deal with. And so I don't really have to have magic when I get to a boss. The magic for me is about surviving the main levels easier. There we go, we just got all our health back. And actually, you know, come to think of it, the boss of this stage is actually pretty easy as well. He's not really a huge threat here. Let's go ahead and go through this door. And this is probably the last one, then we'll get thrown outside. I think this is probably the last one. Go ahead and just use our magic. Hold up. And there we go, we're outside now. And so we'll probably get a couple power-ups here, and then we'll fight one of the bosses that's actually featured pretty heavily in the cutscenes over the course of this game. Again, the cutscenes in this aren't really anything to write home about. It's pretty basic stuff. I mean, a lot of cutscenes from the NES days were pretty basic. But if I recall correctly, I think this game actually came out after Ninja Gaiden, so it's actually, you know, a little disappointing that, you know, they have the cutscenes like Ninja Gaiden, but they're just, you know, very still for the most part. They're not all that interesting. And on this boss right here, you basically want to smack his hand off, and so I definitely use my charge-up attack in this. So I just let my bar charge up, hit him once, and then walk away, and I can attack his projectiles if I really want to. And if I also wanted to, I could just play quickly, you know? You don't have to just charge up. You can just play quickly like this, and it is a perfectly viable strategy. It might actually be easier for you to play that way. So kind of like this, I'm just playing very snappy now. But you can also just let your meter charge all the way up, and if you do it that way, you'll actually end up killing him in many less hits. There we go, just like that. Like, you are so much more powerful if you let your power meter charge all the way up. Something else I haven't noted is that, you know, for every, you know, heart and magic point you have, those are actually ticked down at the end of the level, and you're given, I think, 100 points apiece for those. You do get extra lives in this game. It's like, I think 200,000 might be your first extra life, 300,000 might be your next, and then 400,000 is another. And then the manual, I believe, states that it is, it's every 200,000 points after that you'll get another extra life. So you do have extra lives in this game. I have 6 lives right now if you look in the bottom left-hand portion of the screen, which is nice. Oops, I actually pressed the jump button before I attacked, completely by accident. So we're going to go ahead and just, you know, let our weapon charge up. This is the final stage in the game, by the way. You have a boss rush like this, and then you fight a really big dragon boss. And, you know, the dragon boss really isn't anything to write home about. He looks cool, but he's not really all that difficult. We're going to go ahead and use our magic on this guy, because he's just a pain to deal with. And unfortunately, I lost my charge up. When you get hit by him, it seems like you lose your charge. So you have to recharge your attack if you're trying to do the most powerful attack. Oops, still got hit by that. So this guy is actually really easy to deal with. You know, he just, you know, tosses these rocks, and you can either sit right in front of him and the rocks will just go right over you, or not. Not or not. The rocks will always go right over you, or you can sit outside of it and the rock won't hit you either. So I actually kind of made a some bad mistakes here with using the magic and whatnot. I probably should have saved the magic for this guy, and I've been taking a lot of really bad hits. So, you know, once we get to the mini-boss here, I might actually end up dying. but it's not a big deal. We've already died once, twice. I think just once. Did we only die once? Or did we die twice? I don't know. But, you know, it hasn't been a perfect run by a long shot, and I wasn't aiming for a perfect run. I actually only did a couple practice sessions of this on Twitch. You know, I think I beat the game twice, actually. I think that's it. So I didn't really do a ton of practice for this video. And usually with Astyanax, I don't have to do a ton of practice, because, you know, I did play this game as a kid. This was actually one of the first games I ever bought with my own money. And by the time I bought this with my own money, it was a budget title. So here's the actual final boss in the game. And what I prefer to do here is to basically just use my magic if I have it. And his weak spot is in his chest, but his weak spot is only accessible for a short period of time. And he changes colors as you do more damage, and bam, that's it. He's really easy if you are maxed out on your power meter and you've got your sword and you just charge it up all the way. He doesn't take that many hits. And again, he shoots out projectiles, basically these fireballs. And when he shoots up those fireballs, you can attack those fireballs. So there's not really a whole lot of danger to that final boss. I think it probably would have been better if they made it so his projectiles couldn't be destroyed. Or they gave him some kind of attack that where you had to dodge it. You couldn't just kill it. You know, you couldn't just, you know, swipe it out of existence with your sword. But yeah, so this is the ending. We don't really, I don't know, I skipped through all the cutscenes. Do I even need to really show this? So what we're gonna do now is actually basically just reset the game. And since I haven't actually showed any of the cutscenes, I'm not going to show the ending either. So let's go ahead and just show you some codes real quick. So on the title screen, you can actually press up, 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 down, 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 A, B, start. And this gives you demos. Now the demos are actually cutscenes. So if I wanted to, I could go right back to, you know, the final cutscene before we fought the final boss. So I thought that was kind of neat, actually. When you hit start, it just goes right back here. But notice how, like, repetitious some of these cutscenes are. It's a lot of the same stuff. There's that guy, and we see him a bunch of times over the course of a playthrough. And there's Astyanax. You see his face over the course of a bunch of times. There's Astyanax again. You see him like that a bunch of times. It's there. There's the pink skull again. It's not all that interesting, to be honest with you. But let's go ahead and hit reset again. You actually have to reset out. And so what we're going to do now is do the level select, which is up, down, left, right, B, 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 start. And now we can basically go and play through our levels again if we wanted to. If we wanted to practice a very specific level, you can basically use the level select here, and it'll actually start you off at the level with the sword, which is actually quite interesting. I thought it would start me off with the axe, but it started me off with the sword. I wonder if it started me off with the sword because it's remembered my power-ups from beating the game. I wonder if that's still in memory or if the system's glitched out. I could have sworn I started with the axe the last time I did a level select code like this. That's really interesting. Let's go ahead and reset one more time, and we go back to the title screen and we press up, down, right, left, start. And look at this, we get a sound test menu, which is really cool. There is some solid music in this game. I do enjoy the title screen in particular, and you know, I do enjoy the first level theme in particular. I think it's a really good theme, really great starting theme too. So that's really cool. So yeah, I just wanted to show that off to you guys. And you also have a sound effects test as well. You can activate by pressing A, which is also kind of neat. So, but yeah, that is pretty much it, guys. You also have a continue code, which is apparently pressing A, B, select, then start when you get a game over. Yeah, so you can actually... I always thought there were continues in this game, but maybe there weren't. Maybe it's just been a really, really long time since I've had to continue, but if you need to continue, that is it. There's also an invincibility code by pressing up 4 times, down, left, right, up, and start on the title screen. I guess you'll be invincible over the course of your playthrough. So... but yeah, that is Astyanax for the NES. Like I said, it's a pretty fun game. If you haven't played it before, but you like NES action games, I recommend giving it a try. It's still a really cheap game to acquire today, even though, you know, a lot of NES prices have gone up significantly. Astyanax has stayed relatively constant over the years, but it's one of the best bangs for your buck on the system, and it's I think it's a really fun game. I'm not saying that it's just as someone that, you know, owned it as a kid. I go back to it once every couple of years. I've done a previous long play of this. I think I might have done an early Let's Play of it as well, many years ago. And it's just fun, you know. I go back to it even on Twitch when I'm doing NES variety streams. I will bust it out once every now and then. And people will be like, man, this game looks really cool. I want to check that out. And they go check it out and they like it. Because it's a fun game. It's a solid game. It's not, you know, AAA quality, but it's not mediocre either. I think it's a good, solid game. And I do recommend checking it out if you've never played it before. If you know anything more about this game that I do, post some comments down below. Let me, you know some extra details about the game. The arcade version of this I also need to play sometime. I've played it a little bit on MAME, but I haven't gotten that far into it. It's quite a tough game. But it has some similar mechanics as well, with, like, you know, the charge up meter and stuff like that. Also, there's a game on TurboGrafx called Legendary Axe. I don't know if this game is related in any shape or form. I don't know if any developers worked on both projects, but that is also another game that shares a lot of similarities with this game. And it's also a great game. I actually did a TurboGrafx stream sometime last year, and we played a little bit of Legendary Axe, so I got to show that off. That is on my channel here, and maybe we'll do a full Let's Play of that in the future as well. That'll be pretty cool. So, but alrighty guys, that's it. As usual, you know, thanks for watching. If you're brand new to my channel, definitely consider subscribing. I've got a lot of Let's Plays on here, and many more to come. For all of you guys already subbed, thank you for the continued support. Everyone that's still watching, feel free to give the video a big thumbs up or thumbs down, and I guess until the next one, take it easy.